call came after the burial. I just turned the last lock on the front door when the landline rang. 3 short tones, like a warning. I let it ring. But on the third night, I picked up. There was breathing, familiar, wet. And then, my father's voice. He's been dead for 7 years. I don't know what he said. I don't remember. But the voicemail recorded everything. And when I played it back, the voice that answered mine wasn't his anymore. They say some calls never disconnect, that once you pick up, something else starts listening too. Tonight, we're diving into 10 chilling calls that were never meant to be heard. Ones that slipped through the static, across time, and sometimes beyond death. So if you're brave enough to keep listening, grab your headphones, turn down the lights, and try not to answer any unknown numbers. Because once you do, they know you're home. And if by the end, you're still with me, still breathing, leave a sign, a comment, a like, anything to show you're still one of us. 1. The last call of Charles Peck. The twisted steel of the Metrolink train groaned like a wounded animal as rescuers sifted through the wreckage. It was 2008, and one of the worst commuter rail accidents in California history had just unfolded near Los Angeles. Dozens were dead. And yet, someone was still calling. Charles Peck, a 49-year-old passenger, was listed among the casualties. But in the 11 hours following the crash, his fiancée, his son, his stepdaughter, his brother, and several other family members each received a call from his cell phone. No voice ever came through, only static. When they called back, it rang, then went to voicemail. Over and over. The calls gave his family hope. Maybe he was alive, buried in the wreckage, desperately trying to reach out. Rescue teams redirected their efforts. They searched tirelessly. But when they found Charles, he had been dead the entire time. And here's the detail that chills to this day. His body showed no signs of recent movement, no struggle, no chance he made a single call after impact. And yet, his phone kept ringing. To this day, no one knows how or why the calls were made. The device was never found. Some say it was a final burst of energy from a desperate spirit. Others believe something else had taken control. But here's the question. If your phone rang in the dead of night and the name on the screen was someone long gone, would you answer? Or would you let it ring and wonder what it wanted? 2. The midnight message from Grandma. It started with a soft chime. At exactly 12:08 a.m., Sarah's phone lit up with a text message. She was half asleep, the glow of the screen casting eerie patterns across her bedroom walls. With heavy eyes, she glanced at the sender. Grandma. But that couldn't be. Her grandmother had passed away 3 days earlier. Sarah had even helped lower the casket into the ground. Heart pounding, she opened the message. I made it. It's cold here. Tell your mother the mirror in the hallway is the door. Sarah sat bolt upright. Her skin prickled, like the air had suddenly frozen around her. She blinked at the message, hoping it would vanish or show some obvious glitch. But it stayed, perfectly legible, perfectly real. Then came the next message. Don't let him out. She dropped the phone. For hours, she sat in silence, too afraid to check again. At sunrise, she ran to her mother's house. The mirror in the hallway, an old, dusty relic that Grandma had insisted on keeping, was cracked. Not broken from impact, but from inside, as though something had pressed against the glass. No one spoke of it. No one dared remove the mirror. But that night, at 12:08 a.m., Sarah's phone chimed again. He's watching from the other side. The number was deleted. The messages were gone. But the mirror remained, still cracked, still waiting. If someone you loved messaged you from beyond, would you answer back? Or would you delete the message and pray that was enough to keep it out? 3. the dead air operator incident. The call came in at 2:14 a.m., an hour when silence stretches long and uneasy. Clara, a late-night emergency switchboard operator in Ohio, had handled hundreds of distress calls over the years. Most were drunk dials or pocket mishaps. But this one was different. The line was dead silent at first. No voice, no background noise, just the soft, constant hum of a live connection. 911, what's your emergency? She asked, her voice steady. No response. Then the static shifted, not like a malfunction, like breathing. Slow, raspy, close. She leaned in, uneasy. Hello, can you speak? A crackle, then a whisper. He sees you now. Clara froze. There was no caller ID, no pinged location. The line was active, but untraceable, something that should have been impossible in the system. The breath grew heavier, now layered with faint clicking, like fingernails on metal. Then came another whisper. You shouldn't have answered. She slammed the line shut and logged it as a prank. But the call returned at 2:14 a.m. every night for the rest of the week. Same static, same breathing, same voice, until the final call. That night she answered out of reflex, but there was no voice, no breathing, only her voice, recorded from the first night. 911, what's your emergency? Then the recording repeated. Hello, can you speak? Then, silence. And then, from the receiver, he's behind you. The line went dead. She turned. There was nothing. Nothing but her reflection in the dark glass of the office window, and something else just behind her shoulder, something tall, watching. Clara quit the next morning. She refused to speak about it again. But sometimes, when operators train on night shift, they find a strange log in the call database. No number, no voice, just one note attached. Dead air. Do not answer. If your phone rang at 2:14 a.m. and no number showed on the screen, would you dare to pick up? The crying baby on the line. It was just after midnight when Officer Delaney received the call. Routine dispatch, unknown number, weak signal, faint noise on the line. She almost ignored it until she heard the sound. Soft, distant, unmistakable. A baby. Crying. 911, what's your emergency? The infant's cries grew louder, as if moving closer to the receiver. But there were no voices, no shuffling, no background noise. Just crying. Constant. Measured. Delaney repeated her question, tried to trace the call, but the location pinged somewhere it shouldn't have. Middle of Black Hollow Cemetery. No houses, no shelters, no people. Dispatch sent a unit anyway. Standard procedure. When the officer arrived, the cemetery was still and shrouded in heavy fog. But as he stepped past the rusted gates, he heard it too. The crying, faint and echoing between the stones. He followed the sound to an old mausoleum, one that hadn't been opened in over a century. Then the crying stopped. Dead silence. He radioed in. Nothing. Static. As if something had swallowed the signal whole. He reached for the mausoleum door, flashlight trembling, and found something strange. A baby blanket, neatly folded, placed on the threshold, but soaked in something dark. Thick. Inside the mausoleum, the air was freezing. The flashlight flickered. And then, the crying started again, from his radio. Only this time, it wasn't a baby. It was something trying to sound like one. The cries warped, stretched, twisted into something wrong, like vocal cords straining against an inhuman shape. Then the crying turned into laughter, gurgling, mocking. He ran. The next morning, the radio was found on the cemetery steps, still transmitting. And the blanket? Gone. To this day, the 911 dispatch log holds an audio clip of that night, labeled only unknown call. No number, no origin. but sometimes new recruits say they hear it echo through their headsets. Right at midnight, the soft, pitiful sound of a child crying, calling from somewhere they can't reach. If your phone rang and all you heard was the sound of a crying infant outside your window, would you go check? The Vietnam goodbye. It was 1969, deep in the jungle near Da Nang, when Private Tom Harris received a radio call that would follow him for the rest of his life. The patrol had gone quiet, radio silence for nearly 2 hours. Then, out of the crackling static, a voice came through on the long-range frequency. "Tommy, it's me." It was Private First Class David Krantz, his best friend, his brother in arms. But David had been declared missing in action 4 days earlier, after a brutal ambush that left only blood and spent shells in the mud. No body, no sign of him. "Tommy, I'm cold." Harris froze. The transmission was weak, like it was broadcasting from miles beneath the earth. "I'm stuck. It's so dark down here, I think I'm dying." The voice sounded drained, like it was being pulled from a place it didn't belong. Harris fumbled with the mic, stammering, "David? Where are you? Are you hurt?" Static. Then, softly, "Behind you." Harris spun, heart pounding. Nothing, just jungle, mosquitoes, the endless buzz of cicadas, no sign of life. But back on the radio, David kept speaking, his voice growing more warped, filled with static, like a tape decaying in real time. "They buried me, Tommy. I can't move. It's too heavy." The line hissed violently, and then silence. Harris demanded a trace on the frequency. The comms officer paled. There was no source, no origin. The signal hadn't been broadcasting from anywhere. But that night, as Harris tried to sleep in the barracks, his field radio turned on by itself. And again, that voice. "Goodbye, Tommy." When Harris returned home after the war, he had the radio sealed in a box, hidden in his attic. Years later, when his grandson found it and turned it on, a faint voice whispered, "It's still cold down here. If you heard a voice calling you from beyond the grave, someone you loved, would you answer? Or would you let it go unanswered forever?" 6. The haunted voicemail. When Lena checked her phone that morning, she noticed a missed call from an unknown number, time-stamped 3:33 a.m. The witching hour. The voicemail was only 11 seconds long, but those 11 seconds shattered everything she thought she knew about death. At first, it was just static, low, whispering static, like wind moving through dry leaves. Then, a voice, her mother's voice. But her mother had been dead for 7 years. "Lena, honey." The voice was strained, broken, like it was traveling through something heavy. Then louder, urgently, "Don't let them in." The message ended with a strange thump, like something hitting wood. And then a low, growling breath, not human. Lena sat frozen in her kitchen, phone pressed to her ear, barely breathing. That voice had said her name the same way her mother used to when she was little. Warm, trembling, real. The phone rang again. Same number. She didn't answer. Instead, she reported the number, had her provider trace it. The result: untraceable, no record of this call existing. But the next night, it happened again. Another call, another voicemail. This time the voice was whispering something over and over. "They're already inside." When Lena turned to leave the room, the kitchen light flickered and the cabinet doors all swung open at once. She moved out a week later, got a new phone, new number. But every now and then, once or twice a year, the calls come back. Always from a different number, always at 3:33 a.m. Always with her mother's voice, and always with a new warning. If someone you loved called from the other side, would you listen? Or would you dare press delete? 7. The Apartment 3B incident. When Ethan moved into Apartment 3B, the landlord gave him a strange warning. Don't answer the intercom after midnight, no matter who it is. Ethan thought it was a joke, just one of those old building quirks, like creaky floors or flickering lights. But the intercom system was old, analog, wired directly into each unit. No camera, just a buzzer and a voice box. The first time it buzzed after midnight, it was 12:44 a.m. He was half asleep when it went off, just one shrill buzz, then static, then a voice, soft and broken. Let me in. I live here. Ethan got up, confused. Who is this? He asked. A pause, then again. Let me in. I live here. He checked the peephole. No one in the hallway. When he pressed the intercom again, the line was dead. The next night, it happened again. I used to live here. Apartment 3B. Let me in. But this time the voice was lower, almost guttural, like someone forcing words through ruined vocal cords. Ethan asked the landlord about it the next day. The old man looked pale. No one has lived in 3B since 1997. You're the first in over 20 years. The last guy. He stopped himself. The last guy never stopped buzzing the intercom, not even after we buried him. Ethan tried not to think about it. But the next night, and the night after that, it kept happening. Different voices, all claiming they belonged in apartment 3B, sometimes whispering, sometimes screaming. One night, he recorded it, played it back in the morning. But on the tape, there was nothing, just dead silence. And then he noticed something worse. The recording wasn't of the intercom at all. It was the sound of someone breathing inside his apartment. And then, a voice behind him, not from the tape. I told you, I live here. To this day, the building remains occupied, but no one stays in 3B for long. Would you spend a single night in an apartment with a tenant that refuses to die? Or would you leave the key behind and never look back? 8. The forest voicemail. It was supposed to be a peaceful weekend off-grid, just a tent, a fire, and no cell service. That's what James wanted when he hiked deep into the forest near Black Hollow. No distractions, no notifications, no noise. But when he got home 2 days later, his phone was full of missed calls from his mother. And one voicemail. Time-stamped 2:13 a.m. on the night he was camping. Which was impossible. There was no service out there. The voicemail started with silence. Then came the static. Harsh, violent, like the mic was being dragged through thorns. Then, footsteps, crunching leaves. Breathing, shallow, panicked. And then, his own voice. I don't think I'm alone out here. But James never said that. He never remembered recording anything. The message continued, but now it sounded like two versions of his voice, overlapping, one calm, the other whispering, distorted, like a voice through water. And in the background, a third sound, a low clicking noise, rhythmic. Too precise to be an animal, too unnatural to be human. Then came a scream, not loud, just final, like someone accepting their end. And the voicemail cut out. James replayed it for his mother. She turned white and dropped the phone. I heard that sound before, she said, when your uncle disappeared in those same woods. James checked the phone records. There was no outgoing call, no data logged. But when he listened again that night, he swore the breathing on the recording matched the pattern of his own. Exactly. Some say the forest is alive, that it mimics, that it listens. And sometimes, it answers. If your phone rang in the middle of the night, from a place no one should be calling, would you listen? Or would you delete it and pretend it never came? 9. The Static Whisperer. It started after Lillian bought an old second-hand radio at a flea market. A 1950s tabletop model, dusty, faded, but beautiful in that vintage, eerie sort of way. The seller said it still works when it wants to. The moment Lillian plugged it in, the room felt colder. The dial didn't tune to any modern stations, just static, with faint bursts of distorted noise, like echoes from somewhere far away. At first, she thought it was just interference. But then she began to notice something strange. The static wasn't random. Every night, at exactly 2:41 a.m., the sound changed. The fuzz would clear just enough to let through a whisper. Not a voice from a broadcast. Something much closer and deeply wrong. It never said her name, not at first. It would just murmur things she never told anyone. I know what you buried. He never forgave you. She still cries under the floorboards. Lillian started recording the sounds. When she played them back, the messages were gone. Just static. But live. She could hear the whispers breathing in rhythm with her own. Then one night, she asked it a question. What are you? The radio went dead. Then came 3 knocks from inside her closet. And the whisper, not from the radio this time, but directly behind her. I'm already in. She spun around. Nothing. Except the soft hum of the radio, glowing faintly red, even though it wasn't plugged in anymore. She threw it out the next day. But every few weeks, she finds it again, somewhere in the house, always tuned to static, always humming, always waiting. Would you keep listening if something on the other end started whispering your secrets? Or would you smash the radio before it starts whispering someone else's? 10. The Flight 513 recording. They said Flight 513 never landed. A commercial airliner, Santiago Airlines. Flight 513 vanished over the Atlantic in 1954, en route from Germany to Brazil. No wreckage, no distress signal, just gone. Until 1989, when a single bizarre event reignited the mystery. An airport control tower in Porto Alegre received an unexpected radio transmission, an emergency frequency ping from a decommissioned airline code. Flight 513. Static laced the signal, but a voice broke through. Weak, panicked, and impossibly outdated. This is Captain Miguel Victor, Flight 513, requesting permission to land. We've been in the air for far too long. The passengers, they're not breathing. Air traffic control scrambled. No such flight was scheduled, and the call sign hadn't been active in decades. But radar showed nothing, just open sky. Then came the second message. I don't know what year it is. We can't see the ground anymore. There's just clouds and whispering. Whispering? The operator tried to respond, but the line dissolved into screams, not of panic, but of long-dead throats rasping through a dying radio. Then silence. The tape ends with the slow, haunting sound of a music box playing just 4 notes, and then cutting off mid-chime. Conspiracy theorists exploded. Was it a hoax, a misrouted signal from a forgotten era? Or had Flight 513 been flying for decades, lost in some pocket of time, where the passengers aged into silence and the pilot finally, desperately reached out? The airline denied everything. But the tower operator quit the next day, and his only comment, the voice wasn't just scared, it was wrong, hollow, like it didn't come from a mouth anymore. If your radio crackled to life and a long-missing plane begged you for help, would you answer? Or would you pray they never find their way back? If you've made it this far, you heard them too, didn't you? The cries through static, the whispers behind the ringing, the voices that should have stayed silent. Maybe it was just a story, or maybe your phone's been ringing this whole time, and you've just been too afraid to answer. If you've felt something tonight, if even one of these calls gave you chills, leave a trace, type something below. Let us know you're still with us. And remember, some phones only ring once. The next time, they might be calling for you.